If you've ever felt someone sitting behind you in class, even when the seat was supposed to be empty, if you've ever heard breathing or pencil scratches or whispering where no one should be, this story will ruin every quiet classroom you ever enter again. I still don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe because if I don't get it out of my head, I'll start hearing her again. The breathing, the tapping, the whispering. Or maybe she never stopped. Maybe she's waiting for me to remember every detail before she shows herself again. Either way, here it is. This happened when I was in 10th grade. Back when school felt like a routine trap. Same hallways, same teachers, same desks carved with the same stupid initials. I wasn't the popular kid or the quiet kid. I was somewhere in the background, the type no one remembers being in their class photos. But she wasn't forgettable. Her name was Hina Ashraf. I didn't know her well. Nobody really did. She was the quiet girl. Long black hair, bangs hiding half her face, always writing or doodling in a notebook she kept pressed to her chest. Some people called her creepy. Others forgot she existed. But I never forgot the day she died. It was February 11th. Cold, gray, heavy air. She didn't come to school, and by lunch, everyone was whispering that she'd been hit by a speeding car the night before. Some said she died instantly. Others said she survived long enough to say something that made the paramedics freeze. But rumors in school are just rumors. The truth didn't hit until the next morning, when her desk in our Urdu class was empty. No book, no bag, no jacket hanging from the chair. Just empty. Our teacher paused when she saw it. She didn't say anything, just stared for a long, uncomfortable moment before starting class like nothing happened. I sat directly in front of that empty desk, and that was the day everything started. A soft, steady rhythm behind me. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. I kept turning around, but the seat was empty. The first time it happened, I thought it was my imagination, maybe someone in the row behind us breathing weirdly. The second time, I even asked the guy diagonally behind me if he had a cold. He just blinked at me. No, dude. What? I didn't tell him. Because I didn't want to say it out loud. The breathing was coming exactly from the empty seat behind me. Hina's seat. Not random tapping, a pattern. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. Like she was trying to get my attention. Like she wanted me to turn around. And when I finally did, during a quiz, something cold brushed my shoulder. Not a chill. Not the AC. A hand. Cold and light, like someone barely touched me with frozen fingers. I shoved my chair forward so hard that it screeched across the floor. Everyone looked at me. I mumbled an apology and pretended I dropped my pencil, but my heart wouldn't stop pounding, because I knew, deep down, that something was sitting behind me. I'll never unhear it. Soft, broken, like someone speaking from underwater. Azan. I froze. Completely froze. My vision blurred, and I felt cold prickles crawl down my spine. No one else reacted. No one else heard. No one else even looked up. That's when I realized something awful. Whatever she wasn't talking to the class. She was talking to me. A week after her death, as our teacher handed out graded assignments, something slid across my desk. The sound was faint, like paper brushing wood. A notebook. Her notebook. The same worn purple cover. The same frayed edges. The same tiny drawings of eyes, feathers, and trees. I recognized it instantly. I had seen her sketching in it every day. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to, but the notebook slowly creaked open on its own. The first page was blank. The second page too. Then the third. Then the fourth. Until one page stopped flipping and a message appeared. Not written neatly. Not with a pen. Scratched violently into the page as if carved with a nail. Don't turn around today. My whole body went cold. I didn't turn around. Not even once. But the breathing behind me, it was faster that day. And closer. As if her face was right behind my neck. It was second period. Our teacher stepped out to get worksheets from the printer, leaving the class in silence. I was staring at my textbook when I heard it. A chair sliding. The chair behind me. Her chair. Slow, deliberate, the legs scraping against the floor. Everyone else in class froze. A few heads turned. One girl gasped, because the chair, with no one touching it, pulled itself out from under the desk. Like someone invisible had just stood up. The room went dead silent. A cold draft swept through us. The fluorescent lights buzzed, flickered, then steadied. I was terrified to breathe. Then something moved past me. Not visible, not solid, but something brushed against my arm as it passed. Everyone felt the cold. Everyone saw the papers flutter. Everyone saw the door slowly open, then close. We all stared at each other, pale, confused, scared. But I was more than scared. I was being followed. Because when class ended, her chair slid back into place on its own, waiting. Maybe because they noticed how pale I looked. Maybe because I kept flinching at empty corners. Maybe because I started whispering, "Go away," under my breath. Teachers asked if I was sleeping enough. My mother thought I was studying too much. None of them knew the truth. I wasn't afraid of the dark. I was afraid of classrooms. Every time I walked into a room, I felt her slip in behind me. Not walking, drifting, sliding, like air that carried shape and intention. She always sat behind me. Always. Even in rooms where there were no seats. I started skipping class, hiding in bathrooms, walking around the field alone. But she always found me. In mirrors, in reflections, in the shine of doorknobs, in the corner of my vision. Black hair, a pale face, eyes that weren't eyes anymore. Shadow eyes, hollow, watching, waiting, like she wanted to tell me something. But every time her mouth opened, the lights flickered and I heard nothing but static. I turned around, asterisk, asterisk. It was a Monday, 1 month after she died. We had a substitute teacher who kept mispronouncing everyone's names, and the class was louder than usual. I tried to ignore the whispers behind me, but they weren't whispers anymore. They were sobs. Broken, desperate sobs. Shaking breaths. Choking cries. Shoulders trembling. Hair brushing the desk. Hands gripping the edges. I couldn't take it. I turned around, and she was sitting there. Hina, or what was left of her. Her head tilted, hair covering one eye, the other a hollow black void. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her body was faint, transparent around the edges, like mist trying to look human. And her hands were dark, like they'd been burned, or dragged across asphalt, or crushed. Her fingers pointed at her notebook, still on my desk. She wanted me to read it. Her mouth opened wider, stretching into something not human. WW watched them. Her voice was broken, glitching, like a corrupted recording. W watched them. Behind. Her neck snapped backwards suddenly, as if pulled by something invisible. Her body was yanked into the seat, twisted, crushed, and then she vanished. The chair slammed into the desk. The class screamed, but no one saw her like I did. Only I did. Only I heard the warning. Lights flickered everywhere I went. My reflection lagged a second behind. My shadow stretched too long. I heard footsteps behind me in empty hallways. Classroom doors opened when I approached, closed when I tried to walk away. In the notebook, new messages appeared every day, scratched violently into the pages. They see you now. You shouldn't have turned. Run at 1:17. Don't look up. Don't sit in front of any empty desk. And the worst one, you are next. Exactly 36 days after her death. Or due class. Same room, same seat, same empty desk behind me. Except this time, it wasn't empty. Someone was sitting there. A girl, long black hair covering her face. Hands folded neatly on the table. I thought for a second maybe the school had assigned someone new to the seat. Maybe I was overthinking. Then I looked closer. Her arms weren't resting on the desk. They were hanging through it, like her body wasn't fully solid. And the tips of her hair were floating, not resting on her shoulders. Floating. My throat tightened. The notebook slid slowly across my desk. Run. Everything went cold. The girl stood up without bending her knees. Her feet hovered above the floor. Her head twitched violently. Then she lunged. I threw myself back, chair crashing, students screaming. I scrambled across the floor as she rushed toward me, hair whipping, her face contorted and hollow. The room darkened, shadows stretching, desks shaking violently. The last thing I heard was, "You should have never turned around." Then darkness swallowed everything. They said I fainted, that I hit my head, that there was no girl behind me, that I imagined everything. But I know what I saw, what I still see. Because Hina's notebook was still in my backpack. And last night, a new page appeared. Fresh scratches. Deep. Desperate. You turned around. Now you can't turn back. Right behind me. Asterisk asterisk. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. I didn't go around schools thinking the lockers were haunted or the classrooms held spirits. I was practical, logical, until the janitor incident. It happened during my second year of high school. Our school, Alsafa High, was an old building, 3 stories of brick with long corridors that smelled faintly of mildew and chalk. It had been around for decades, and stories about strange happenings were common, but I'd never experienced anything until that night. I was volunteering for the student council to help with a school fundraiser. Part of my duties was cleaning and organizing classrooms for the event after hours. The school had strict rules. No students were allowed past 7 p.m. Janitors and security were supposed to stay in the building at all times. I didn't know it then, but the night I stayed late would change everything. It was just past 7:30 p.m. when I started cleaning room 407. The hallways were silent except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights. I had my backpack on, the flashlight from my phone illuminating the room. Dust floated in the light beam, motes dancing like tiny spirits. I was alone, or so I thought. From the corner of my eye, I noticed someone moving down the hallway. A tall figure, hunched slightly, pushing what looked like a mop bucket. I waved, expecting it to be a janitor, but the figure didn't wave back. Didn't even seem to notice me. It glided down the hall, silently, the wheels of the bucket squeaking faintly. I shook my head. Probably one of the new staff members, I told myself. But then the sound stopped. The wheels squeaked no more. The figure vanished. I went back to organizing the desks when I first heard it, a faint dragging sound, like metal scraping across tile. I froze. It was coming from the hallway. Slow, deliberate, steady. Not the sound of a janitor's cart. Something heavier. Something unnatural. I grabbed my phone, shining the flashlight toward the door. The hallway was empty. No one there. Nothing. The only sound was my own breathing, quick and shallow. I laughed nervously. Okay, just the janitor, I muttered to myself. But I knew I was lying. It wasn't the janitor. I had passed him earlier in the day. He was shorter, middle-aged, cheerful. This wasn't him. It wasn't long after that the rumors started. Other students and teachers had mentioned seeing a tall, pale janitor in the building at night. Except the school hadn't hired anyone new. There was no record of him. The security office had no files. The night supervisor insisted the janitors left before 7 p.m. But the sightings continued. And that night, I experienced it firsthand. As I left room 407, heading for the stairwell, I saw him standing at the end of the hall. Tall, broad shoulders, wearing an old janitor uniform that looked decades out of date. His face was pale, almost waxy, and there was something wrong about it. He didn't blink. He didn't move his mouth, but his eyes black as pitch. Hollow, staring straight at me. I froze. He lifted a hand slowly and pointed toward the far end of the hallway. Not threatening, not welcoming, just pointing. I wanted to run. I wanted to turn away. But something, an instinct I couldn't explain, kept my feet planted. Then, just like that, he disappeared. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. I continued my duties, tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, imagination, stress. But then I smelled it. Rotten metallic wet, like blood mixed with rust. Strong enough to make me gag. It came from the janitor's closet. Room 410. I had never entered it before. The smell was overpowering. Curiosity, terror, and disbelief collided in my chest. I opened the door. Nothing. Just shelves with cleaning supplies, mops, buckets, rags. No source for the smell, but it lingered, thick and cloying, filling the room. My stomach turned, and then I saw it. A mop bucket pushed slightly forward, wheels scraping the floor. Slowly, as if someone or something was pushing it from the inside. I bolted out, heart hammering, head spinning. I ran down the hallways, flashlight beam shaking. I wanted to get out. Security guards were patrolling, I thought. I'd be fine. But then I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Behind me. Not running. Not chasing. Just walking. Steady. I turned my head. Nothing. I turned again. Still nothing. But the sound didn't stop. I sprinted toward the main entrance. The school seemed different now. Hallways were longer. Shadows twisted unnaturally in the corners. Every door I passed seemed to move slightly, just enough to make me question reality. The footsteps kept pace, echoing even when the hallway was empty. I stumbled into the lobby. The lights flickered, and then I saw him again. The janitor, standing at the top of the staircase, pointing again. Same hollow eyes, same pale face. I didn't realize it at first, but I was trapped. The doors to the lobby refused to budge. Windows wouldn't open. I was alone with him. He stepped forward slowly, each movement deliberate. Shadows stretched from him, curling along the walls like smoke. The air grew colder. I could see my breath. I backed away, tried to find another exit. But every hallway looked the same, looping back on itself. The school had become a maze, a trap, and then I heard whispers, faint, almost inaudible, coming from the walls, from the floors, from the shadows curling around me. Stay, stay, stay. I screamed, but no sound came out. My voice was swallowed by the darkness. Desperate, I ran toward the basement. I remembered it was rarely used, storage for old files, janitor closets, and old trophies. Maybe I could hide there. The stairs were cold, damp, the walls slick with condensation. And then I smelled it again, the metallic stench, stronger this time. Blood, rust, decay. And at the bottom of the stairs, I saw the janitor waiting. Not moving, just waiting. The mop bucket next to him, wheels turning slowly on their own. I froze. My flashlight flickered. And then I realized there were more. Shadows of other janitors, long-dead staff members, pale, hollow-eyed figures lingering in the corners. They weren't real, not alive, but they were there, watching, waiting. One of the figures stepped forward. Closer. Hollow eyes locked on me. A faint whisper. You don't belong here. Leave, or stay forever. I backed into the wall, heart racing. I didn't move. My flashlight flickered and died. Total darkness. I heard footsteps all around me. Whispering. Mopping sounds. Wheels scraping the floor. Cold air brushing my neck. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Silence. When I looked up, I was at the top of the stairs again. The night janitor was gone. The basement was empty. Lobby doors were unlocked. I ran out. Never looked back. The school never acknowledged what happened. Security logs showed no one was in the building after 7 p.m. Other students claimed they hadn't seen anything unusual. I tried to tell my friends, my parents, even a teacher I trusted. They thought I was joking or hallucinating, but I know the truth. There is a janitor who doesn't exist, a shadow that haunts the hallways. Sometimes at night, I see him in my dreams, walking silently, mop bucket squeaking, pointing, watching, waiting, and I know one day I might go back, not because I want to, not because I have to, but because the janitor will come for me. I never thought a fire alarm could terrify someone. I mean, alarms go off all the time. Drills, burnt toast, electrical faults. You panic, you evacuate, then life goes on. But that night, in Lincoln High, I learned that the sound of an alarm isn't always a warning. Sometimes it's a calling. It all began on a Friday. Our school had a half-day schedule. Teachers were wrapping up classes, students were leaving early, and the corridors were unusually quiet. I was still in the classroom, our physics lab, catching up on assignment I had neglected all week. I loved that lab. It was at the far end of the second floor, isolated from the main hallways. That isolation became both a blessing and a curse. The room was silent, save for the hum of the lights and the scratch of my pen on paper. My friends had already left. My teacher, Mr. Ahmed, was tidying up at his desk, muttering about grades. The clock read 1:47 p.m. It started quietly, a faint clicking, barely audible. I paused, listening. Mr. Ahmed didn't notice. The clock ticked. The clicking grew louder. Then, without warning, the fire alarm blared. At first, I thought it was a drill. The lights flashed red. A mechanical voice started repeating, "Evacuate. Evacuate." But something was wrong. The sound didn't feel mechanical. It didn't feel like a normal alarm. It was warped, distorted, high-pitched, but under it a low growl like something breathing through the speakers. Mr. Ahmed looked up, his expression frozen. He muttered, "That's not possible, the alarm. It shouldn't." I froze. Something in his voice, something in the way he stared at the ceiling, told me this wasn't ordinary. I should have run. Everyone should have evacuated. But the hallway outside the lab was dark. Shadows clung to the walls, stretching unnaturally. Every classroom door I passed was open. Empty. Except the shadows. They weren't human. Not really. They were humanoid, vaguely shaped but twisting, bending. Limbs longer than they should have been, fingers stretching, faces blurred. They didn't move like people. They glided. And they were coming for me. I ran. Down the hallways, twisting left and right, the alarm's wail following me like a predator's roar. It wasn't just sound, it was alive. Vibrating, pulsing, forcing my chest to tighten, my head to pound. Every time I turned a corner, the shadows were closer. Always closer. I reached the stairwell, hoping to escape to the first floor. But the stairwell stretched. Not physically at first. The steps elongated. The ceiling climbed, walls curving inward as if the building itself had become a trap. The shadows appeared on the steps above me. Dark, black voids, faces warped, limbs bending impossibly. They didn't speak. Not yet. But I could feel them watching, judging, waiting. I tried to call out, but no sound came. My voice swallowed. I stumbled down the stairs, nearly falling. The alarm shrieked, echoing through the building. And then I heard laughter. Low, deep, not human, echoing through the stairwell, bouncing off walls. At the bottom of the stairs, I found the exit. Relief washed over me. The main doors. Freedom, but they didn't open. Not physically, not logically. I pulled, twisted, pushed with every ounce of strength, and the doors remained locked. I was trapped. The shadows pressed closer, stretching along the walls, pooling at the doors like liquid. The alarm above me distorted, warping into words I could barely understand. Stay forever. Join US. The voice was coming from everywhere. The ceiling. The floor. Inside my head. I turned back, desperate, looking for another escape. And that's when I realized the building was changing. Hallways I'd walked hundreds of times before now twisted impossibly. Classrooms duplicated themselves. Doors opened to identical rooms. The second floor looped back on itself like a nightmare maze. The shadows moved through the rooms. One appeared at the front of a classroom, staring at me. Hollow eyes. Mouth stretched unnaturally, silent scream. Then another appeared behind me. And another. I was surrounded. Every classroom had her. Or him. Or them. I couldn't tell. Shadows merged, split, multiplied. And above it all, the fire alarm shrieked, a pulse that seemed to shake reality itself. As I ran, I heard whispers. At first, faint. Run, run, don't stop. Then louder. Names being called. Voices of students I didn't know. Past victims, trapped in the building. Desperate, screaming, crying. You're next, you belong, stay. I tried to plumb my ears. My hand shook. My vision blurred. Shadows reached for me from walls, ceilings, floors. Cold tendrils wrapping around my ankles, arms, neck. I tripped. Fell. Then I saw him. A tall figure in a janitor uniform. Pale, faceless, hovering at the end of the hallway. Not real. Not alive. But commanding. The shadows recoiled from him slightly, as if he controlled them. He pointed to a classroom door. I knew I had to enter. I didn't want to, but something, compulsion, instinct, terror, forced me forward. Inside, the room was empty. But the desk, a notebook sat. Open. Pages flipped by themselves. Words appeared. You cannot escape. The alarm has chosen you. Now you belong. The shadows pressed against the door, trying to enter. I screamed. I bolted. Out of the classroom. Down the hall. But the hall didn't exist anymore. Instead, endless darkness stretched in all directions. I ran blindly, crashing into walls that weren't there a moment ago. The alarm, it wasn't mechanical. It was alive. A living entity, summoning the shadows, reshaping the school to trap me. I stumbled into the library. Normally a safe, quiet place. But the bookshelves stretched impossibly, rows multiplying, forming a maze. Shadows crawled along the shelves, twisting, reaching for me. I hid behind a stack of books, barely breathing. The alarm's pulse was in my chest now, throbbing, pounding, controlling. Figures from the past appeared. Students I had never met, some half-fused into walls, others kneeling, bowed, their faces twisted, eyes hollow. All silent, all waiting. One figure turned to me. Its mouth opened unnaturally wide. Words didn't come out, only intent. A command. Stay. I bolted. I ran into a classroom, slammed the door. The shadows pressed against it like water. I could hear whispers, leave, never stay, forever. I thought I was trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. Somehow I woke up, my backpack on the floor, my forehead bruised. Fire alarm silence. Empty hallways. Time had passed, but no one seemed to notice I'd been gone. I tried to explain. Teachers smiled, shook their heads. Just a dream, probably. Security cameras showed nothing unusual. The alarm had gone off, but there was no fire. Nothing. But I know. I remember. The shadows. The voices. The janitor. The endless looping classrooms. And at night, sometimes I hear it again. A faint alarm. High-pitched, distorted, alive. Whispering my name. Calling me back. I don't go near the second floor anymore. Not alone. Not all. But I know one day, the alarm will call again. And I won't be able to resist.